You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching the Meta Show.
And we're live! Yay! It worked! I didn't break anything. And nobody in this channel is talking. So I have a feeling that I broke something?
No.
What?
Oh, you're here!
Like...
Woohoo! I didn't break it. We're live, Mittens.
Okay.
So bad.
I don't have a camera today, so you need to actually...
Yes, it's live! We're there! We're doing things!
Alright, good. We're doing it. Alright, wonderful. Well, it should be a hell of a meta show today. We've got Aerith with us, as well as Moomin. I think we were supposed to have the judge on board, but... alas. So, I have no notes. Normally, when we do a show...
I sent you notes!
Boat has a...
Hold on.
Entire document that he sent me, and he might have it. I'm going to try to bring it up in another window. But I'm reaching out to you guys from Chicago. We're down here. We caught a Nine Inch Nails concert last night, and so our normal equipment is not available.
Yeah, I sent you on Skype. I forgot you might not have Skype. That's a good point. Yeah, it's going to be a great show, because 90% of it's going to be talking about how CO2 just died in less than a week by the click of a few buttons.
And it's pretty awesome that we have Aerith here for that. So let's go ahead and introduce our guests. So maybe 2 or 3 people don't know who Aerith is at this point. Aerith, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what part you played in the doom of CO2?
So I am the Goon Swarm side of the flip, with Judge being the CO2 side. And just like I said last week, if it's an evil plan, I probably had a hand in it.
That is evil, right?
Can't hear your boat.
Oh, you can't hear me? Wait, what? Oh, God.
There you go.
No, I said last week we were in Cancun, weren't we? So it would be the week before.
Whatever. Like, I foreshadowed.
Look, shit happened, yo. Hello.
All right. So we have that, and we have Moomin here as someone to provide color commentary. Welcome, Moomin. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hello, my name is Moomin, and I am an F1 monkey and official eye candy of Theta.
Excellent. So yeah, it's been a interesting week. Actually, it's been 2 weeks, of course, since we didn't have a meta show last weekend. Bode and I were in Cancun with Aerith at Goon Base 1, which is a place that the Star Chamber occasionally retreats to. And we had lots of adventures there, dodging Hurricane Irma and Katia and an 8.1 earthquake on the Richter scale, which was, I think, just a couple hundred miles from us.
Yeah, the power went out on the whole island, and we lost the internet, phone service, and power at one point for like 4 hours, and it was hot as fuck. I was drunk and in a hammock, so I didn't notice the ground shaking or anything, and I like passed out and acted like I woke up the next day, and it turned out that I'd already missed all the excitement. Yeah, I woke up at like 5 or 6, and my room was fucking hot as balls, and I was like, what the hell? And then no power, and so I went outside, just jumped in the pool for a little bit till power came back, then went back to bed. It was wonderful. This the life.
I was out eating breakfast. Like, we were already out eating breakfast, the early rise crew, and so we just we asked the restaurant, "Can you still cook?" Yep. Okay, make us some breakfast.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, I sent you the thing. I PM'd it to you on Discord here, so you should have the list of activities for today. Hopefully it worked. Yeah, we had a lot of people there. We had a lot of cool dudes. Kid Color Wild, Nimblar. There was a whole bunch of people, and it was absolutely wonderful. For the drunken adventures that we got into, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast. So yeah, okay. It looks like we've got. I actually do have. And we have a lot to talk about today, of course. Yeah. People are making reference to the Matania Fan Fest with the wizard hat. Easily the best gift to come out of the CO2 drama. I think X-Rinsa came up with that, and that was fantastic. And yeah, so we've got a lot of things. I mean, Snuff. We've got to cover basically 2 weeks because we missed last week due to Cancun. Oh yeah, fuck, right. Snuff has joined the Imperium, which is kind of a big deal. And then CO2 doesn't exist anymore, which is also kind of a big deal. And there's no question that our
first topic for the top story is going to be everything that happened with CO2 and how that went down.
Yeah, and since we're talking about things that don't exist, Vanguard Coalition doesn't exist, and we're going to talk about that too.
Impasse when the walls fell. Aerith, his arms wide open. Yeah, the best thing about the that Star Trek frame is that so many of the aspects of what happened can be put into Eve speak.
Yeah, it'd be more like Giggs, his ass gaped.
Wow.
All right, so yes, without further ado, we're gonna jump right into it today. I'm gonna hit the top story button. We're gonna go right into it because this is gonna be hilarious. I'm so excited for this. And the first thing I do want to share, I linked this in Elysium earlier. Let's see if I can find it here. A tweet went out this morning from the North Korean Democratic Republic, or People's Republic, or whatever, saying that their glorious leader claims responsibility for the greatest heist in EVE history.
Really? We got on the DBRK News tweet?
Yes, we
That
did.
is awesome.
We were on the official tweet. Yeah,
That
let me
is,
see if
you
I can
realize
find
that's
it
a
here.
troll account, right?
Yes, I know it's a
Parody
troll
site.
account, and what's even better about it, too, is they're like, details of how he pulled it off will be released in 50 years.
It's a parody, but sure.
Yes, I know, but it's so good.
I follow that account, so I'm pretty
Yes,
proud.
so do I.
Proud of Aerith's operation getting us there.
So, yeah, that's the very first question that we're going to jump out to. When we were in Cancun, we heard about this, obviously, as a possibility of you had flipped the judge at FanFest. But how the hell does one go about flipping
Not
someone?
FanFest, at the summit.
Or the summit, yeah. How does one go about doing that? Like, how did that play out?
It was just months and months of grinding out a relationship, like just building it up to where he would even trust us enough to talk about, possibly flipping, building it up enough to where in his head, we were supported enough that if there was another narrative going on the other side that was bad, like, Giggs being a abusive asshole, then it would be enough to kind of push him over the top. But again, it wasn't flip right away. It was more like, hey, maybe we can flip him as a spy only.
Like a
Or
slow
maybe-
grind, you know?
Yeah, just because you can't build a relationship like that. I mean, it took 3 summits to do it, to have a relationship where we felt like we could make that deal.
Well, we did also vote for him twice as well.
Right,
So
there was a lot of
there's that.
overtures. Like, we'd been doing things for a year to try to win that up.
I think GigX kind of helped you a bit, though. Wouldn't you agree? Like, the amount of
He did all the
toxicity-
heavy lifting. Giggs
Right,
has all the
right.
heavy lifting.
I mean, essentially, the weird thing about the CO2 drama from a outside perspective is just that, I mean, obviously, it's not an outside perspective because of my position in Gunswarm, but I was not leading or really having anything to do with this op. This was entirely something that Aerith and Anominate have worked on for a while, with GigX doing most of the work, as Aerith says. But it is curious from this perspective, I guess, that so many people had spent so long defending CO2 and defending GigX after they betrayed Goonswarm and the rest of the Imperium, and we released all their diplomatic logs, which included a number of instances of GigX saying about how he's going to find out people's names and send thugs to their house and making repeated real-life threats. And then when Test and CO2 first went to war, we started to see other people in EVE basically finally getting ungaslighted and realizing that, lo and behold, actually, Goonswarm didn't make any of this shit up. We wouldn't forge 500 pages of diplomatic logs. GigX has a very distinctive textual style. He's threatened lots of people. There's nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing new was revealed here. I think the only thing that has been revealed by this is that it's allowed a bunch of people who were in sort of a weird, emotionally abusive relationship with GigX as a shitty friend to realize that he is, in fact, just a shitty person, and he doesn't hit or he doesn't abuse his directors and his friends because he loves them. He's just actually a bad, shitty guy.
Yeah, here's a link from, it was posted recently by a guy from Test, talking about GigX needing to get at someone and getting addresses, and that was in 2014. So, I mean, he's a little crazy. I mean, but that's not surprising. Most EVE Serbians I know have said things like this in the past. Like, he's not the first.
Well, I think another interesting thing from all of this is whenever you have an alliance which is dependent upon a single personality to that degree, then it's always going to be at risk.
Right. Because all it takes is his second going, yep, fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a funny scenario here, and I'm going to go ahead and out this. I wasn't sure at the time whether it was a false flag op, but it appeared to be real. Was another one of GigX's directors had approached Goonswarm about 6 months ago, Aerith, do you remember? Was it about 6 months ago?
I think it was that long ago, but maybe, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was in San Diego, so I think it was like late January, February, maybe March. Basically saying that GigX had made him do a whole bunch of work and that things were going crazy, and GigX was basically just making him do all of the scut work with no credit and just grinding into him. And when things would go wrong, even though this guy was doing all the work, GigX would just blame him. And he had reached out to us about coming in from the cold as well. And then he got a case of the fear and he backed out. So I think that guy probably lost everything in the Keepstar because he. But I mean, you know, there's a lot of times people will go like, you know, it's sad to say that there's the framing that I'm using for this involves, you know, sort of abuse, but it does seem a lot of people who are.
That happens so often, though, in so many alliances. I remember,
people have the battered wife relationship with PL. Yeah.
Well, you have a situation. I mean, you bring up that whole disgruntled director wants the fuck out. That happened with Test. If you remember back when they had that GSOL like version of their GSOL director, go, you know what? I've been doing all the POS work. I'm done with this shit. I'm just gonna flip. Fuck this. I'm tired of doing all this mindless work for no credit kind of thing. And that tends to happen in like groups that have like a solo leader who takes all the credit and does all the name, like standing up and saying, look, I did this, and then you have a group of people who are doing all the work and they get nothing out of it. No money, no nothing, right? So yeah, it's fucking amazing.
There, but for the grace of God, go we. I mean, that's the thing is that you look at. I think that for a lot of alliance leaders, when you see something like this happen to GigX, that you have to wonder: is your own house in order, right? Like, you know, are you treating your people fairly? Like, are you listening to the wrong guys? Are you wallowing in your own hubris? You know, the question that somebody like GigX poses to all alliance leaders is, you know, I think, what are you doing for your people? And it's scary because you know, you see these guys, and I worry about it myself. You know, sliding into the hubris.
Well, I see. Here's another thing that's interesting too: is that, as Eric pointed out, working for a year on this guy to get him to flip. It's so much drastically different than what happened with Bob. Like, Bob was like a guy come out of nowhere. Look, I have all this access. I'm tired of this shit. I'm done. Bye. It was like all of a sudden, very sudden, very like, do we trust this guy? Do we go with it? But with it seems like with the judge, it seems like you've been building on this. Like, you knew it was going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Like, when was it going to?
Well, I knew at one point, yeah, it was going to happen. At the very beginning, I didn't know it was going to happen. I just strongly suspected it could. It was one of the two names we brought back and went, hey, we'll target these two people and we might make something happen.
So I seem to remember, Arith, that the point that you actually knew that it was on was at a dinner. And the question that's been, you know, burning away with me is, was it a candlelit dinner?
I think it actually was. There may have been candles in that restaurant. I don't know if they were at our table, but I remember candles.
So do tell. Like, he just like sat down with you and was like, look, it's happening. I'm done with this shit.
No. Like, I knew he was flippable by the end of the second summit, which was, you know, 6 months ago or whatever. But this time the mission was going to be try to flip Judge. Like, I had kind of called the ball before I went to the summit. And then maybe halfway through the summit, I thought, yep, it's happening for sure at the summit. And then by that last dinner, it was just negotiations at that point almost.
Yeah, the thing that's it's interesting about it too is like when you were talking about it in Cancun, it was just like, it reminded me very clearly of what he did back to get GigX to flip. He had been working with Blarf when Blarf went fuck goons and joined PL for months and months until finally he said, okay, I'm going to convince GigX to switch sides because that's what's best for us. So as soon as you said he was flipping and had been working on it for a while, it just seemed like he was the kind of person that eventually can be convinced of, yeah, this shit ain't working. We got to go somewhere else.
The guy that wants to play the meta, and he's not going to get that with gigs. So he's going to at least try to come somewhere where he can maybe have a chance at that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things is that while the judge, everybody's like, oh, you're never going to have any roles or things. And obviously giving the judge roles would be foolish. But one of the things that was interesting about this operation, and this is all credit to the judge here, when you do a disband or something like that, what we did with the Bob disband and with some of the other things we've done is like you get together with the core group of only a handful of people, because the more people know, the more dangerous it is. And you make a checklist in advance, because when you start the actual op, your adrenaline is rushing and you might make mistakes. So make a checklist, plan it all out, run it through people, and then everybody gets together and manages the operation in real time as the person goes around and does the smash and grab. With Judge this time, what was amazing is, Aerith had talked to him about it, and we'd sort of done a little bit of preliminary work, but as far as I was concerned, practically nothing. And the judge essentially comes to us early, which I had been worried in Cancun. I'd been saying, Aerith, you need to tell this guy that every day that we go, there's a risk that GigX will just have a moment of accurate paranoia and just strip his rolls and it's over. So the judge didn't come to Goonswarm and go okay, guys, I'm going to do it. What do I do? He came to us and was like, hey, so I did it a day early. I've already done everything. I took everything that they have. Here's a keep star. Are we cool? So this is a dude who, in terms of execution, I immediately was like, wow, I want him to do some stuff in the Black Hand as at least a handler or something. The guy has what he pulled off in terms of operational espionage skills in game was wasted on his potential when he was just being a diplomat before.
Yeah, and
we only gave him 3 pre-things when we started initially discussing it. 1, strip all rolls from those that can take yours, right? Or try to strip it to where they can't grab things and stop you from taking them. 2, secure the keep star in an opening move. And then 3, go ahead and make sure you do the ACLs on the keep star right away. And other than that, you could do whatever you wanted and take all the time you wanted. And I don't even know they ended up doing 3. And he said he was done in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. The timeline of events here. So for those that weren't paying attention to how this went down, because I was asleep. I got back from Cancun. I hadn't slept, and I blacked out. I was like, oh, this is going to go down Wednesday. I got time to sleep 15 hours. And I wake up, it's done. And so here's how it went. Judge stole the keep star, stuck it in his alt corp. He then took all the citadels around Impis, stuck all of those into test hands, into a test corp in less than a few minutes. They owned all the citadels in Impis. It was fucking ridiculous. The Keepstar cloning was turned off and back on again, along with the other citadels. According to one of the guys that posted in a thread, he lost 4 high-grade sets, totaling about 20 billion ISK, all said and done, because we turned cloning off. The clones just die.
That's one guy, too.
Yeah, that was one guy. Yeah. He had 4 or 5 supers. All those clones died because he was in subcaps. Then he sold us the Keepstar for bucks. Then he took and took all the shit that they owned. And then it went from there. Holy shit. Fuck. And then GigX, of course, they had a Talking in Stations emergency show. And GigX, of course, the judge was streaming live as he did all this. Was dumb enough to say something in Alliance chat along the lines of, let me find him, I'm going to chop his hands off. And then, yep, that was it. GigX was banned within a few hours, and that was over.
The thing that I found interesting about all of that, though, is generally I see it is if I make a mess of something, if I wrong someone, I go off and I apologise to them. I don't make it a public thing. But the GigX wasn't actually doing that at all. He went straight to the community to apologise to the community. He didn't say anything to Judge. He didn't try and get in touch with him at all, from what I can gather, to apologise. It was just all hate.
Yeah, I just lost 3 or 4 trillion ISK in personal assets because I was dumb and said a few words that I shouldn't have said. Now I need to do everything I can to get it back.
Judge also cancelled all their corp jobs.
And also, Aerith, I have another kind of question for you as well, because it seems to me that the trajectory that CO2 has actually been on for a number of months more so was relatively self-destructed, and that all seems to have been egged on by the PAM fam. Is that something that you feel kind of contributed in order to allow Judge to actually do what he did? Do you feel that accelerated that along?
Well, they definitely caused... Test caused this whole little mini war thing, which really wasn't the death of CO2, and it wouldn't have been. They would have just moved somewhere at worst case. But it definitely probably put more stress on Giggs to where he was liable to like berate people even more, right? Which was great timing for the summit.
Yeah, I saw this too. We'll get to that a little bit later. But another thing that was rather interesting in the wake of all this. So this week we've been watching a lot of news to see who says what about what. And one of the biggest ones was there's at least 10 threads by 10 different big name people, including guys like Caprice on Cat Fruits, basically saying that GigX should not be banned. It should be reversed. Look at this. Like, you're talking about people who are involved in the major wars of EVE, all calling for GigX to be unbanned. I thought that was kind of interesting that many people would come out. Like, they were kind of part of why GigX lost his space in the first place. Yeah,
let's be clear about that. When you're saying that it's major people, like it's major FCs from Pandemic Legion.
Right. And a couple NC guys and things like that.
We knew from intel that I don't want to say we knew from intel. So what I'll equivocate and say, it seemed apparent to us in Goonswarm that Pandemic Legion had intended to deploy on CO2's side. Their pattern of behavior is typically to find a war that's already in progress, and most of the work has been done by one side or the other, and then to sort of swoop in and sort of take the credit and the spotlight for whatever was taking place. So we believed that PL's FCs had planned to deploy to support CO2 against Test, and then to poach CO2's super pilots into PL, which is, again, standard operating procedure for them. So when the judge did his thing, most of the members of CO2, if you saw the posts, the CO2 guys were pissed at the judge. But the people from PL were raging at Goonswarm and being upset about this instead of being mad at the judge, which was interesting.
Yeah, that's another thing, too. It seemed like from all the work that CO2 was doing, like GigX probably was doing this behind Judge, was to get PL in a position where they could come down and fuck with Brave. Like, they were giving up Fortizars that PL didn't have access to the last time they came down here because they kept losing them. Things like that. So it looked like PL was going to come. It also seemed rather interesting, or rather telling about all this, too, was that Pandemic Horde came down, and they chose the side against CO2. And they're still deployed down there, and they're still fighting Tri at this moment. So,
isn't it Pandemic Horde have had their services acquired by DRF in order to hassle Tri?
Yeah, FCON bought them. So that's another facet to all this. So it's interesting because history has shown like NC Dot and Tri worked together, but you didn't see NC Dot come down at all. They went right for Syndicate, and then you had PL kind of just twiddling their thumbs, and now it's probably too late. Lol.
Oh, what? NC going for the moons that they didn't care about?
Yeah. Another thing interesting is they had an alliance meeting, CO2 that is, as soon as the shit went down, saying, look, everything's all right. We're just going to see what happens. We know GigX is banned. We know he made a mistake. We're going to try our best to get him unbanned. Right in the middle of that, CCP Falcon posted, look, he's banned. He's not being unbanned, and we're not going to talk about any more about it in public channels, and locked a bunch of threads that related to that. So, of course, they took to Reddit. That didn't help them either. And then a few days later, CO2 GigX announced that the Alliance is disbanding. All members or corps are going to go their own ways. And that GigX is taking a break from EVE for an unknown amount of time until either he gets unbanned or comes back to the game as a new player. RIP.
Obliterated.
Yeah.
Well, it was a bit more than that. That was a bit more to the actual ban, though, because, let's be honest about it, is GigX not only made real-life threats from inside the game, these were reiterated outside of the game. He then kind of released the communications with CCP regarding his ban, and he also encouraged his own members during the State of the Alliance to mass petition CCP to get him unbanned, all of which are against the EULA.
Yeah,
one of the things about all this stuff that does kind of bother me is, I think that, I saw in chat earlier when we were talking about GigX apologizing to his alliance and stuff about his behavior, some people are saying it's like a fake apology. People said that about me when I apologized for fucking up. And I don't doubt that GigX feels really shitty and that he regrets threatening to cut off Judge's hands. Like, I don't doubt his apology at all. I don't think it is he still is going to hate the judge for being a traitorous backstabber. He's not going to like feel bad about being angry about the judge. He's going to feel guilt and legitimate guilt, and legitimately want to apologize to his alliance for what he did. So I don't doubt judges. I mean, I don't doubt GigX's apology, and because I've been there myself, and so I don't think it was a false apology. Like, of course, the guy is going to feel really bad and shitty about getting his people into that scenario.
Yeah, I don't know, Mittens. Mittens, you seem a far better man than I, because I remain somewhat dubious, to be perfectly honest.
The difference is very simple. He did his apology after the ban. Mittens did his before.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Right. And here's the thing
basically, I think that it's clear when we know this because we had their alliance meetings, that their apology was part of a group effort to get GigX unbanned. But, GigX, of course, had a history of violent statements and threatening people within the game. We've got screenshots of it. We've got logs of it. I think the reason why GigX got banned is that this happened because it was on a stream. Like the Alliance tournament incident in 2012 that I was responsible for is something that people have clearly forgotten the history on it because it's 5 years ago. But it's important to point out that that Alliance panel was on Thursday of FanFest, and the only reason why it went anywhere is that Riverini of Eve News 24 worked with Brendan Drain, who is at Massively OP. And on Sunday, after Riverini realized that he hadn't won the election for CSM, he sent out a whole bunch of email blasts to the major media sites in the games journalist world. And he explicitly misrepresented what happened, said that I had called out somebody's real name and tried to basically made it sound like I was trying to get somebody to kill themselves who was there, right there. So after the media picked it up, days and days and days after it happened with incorrect facts, that was what kicked it off. GigX had been threatening people quietly in channels for years. It was not really an unusual thing. We all knew about it. I think the reason why GigX got banned was that he did it when he was on live stream. And I think he did it knowing everybody in CO2 knew that their Alliance chat was on live stream. And that sort of visibility is hard to walk away from.
Plus, you have
claimed later he didn't know. That was the big thing.
Yeah, well, you look at the situation, look at the timeline, right? So he got woke up, which I believe was 5 a.m. his time in the morning. And within 30 minutes, he says what he says, right? Imagine just going to bed within the last few hours, because GigX was one of those guys that stayed up all night doing logistics. And then you're getting phone calls, imagine Mittens getting a phone call, and you're barely awake if you're not a morning person. And then you are realizing that everything's gone, and, in a moment of stupidity, he starts flipping out. Not to say what he did was justifiable, but yeah, there. According to Twitch chat, there was a couple of posts saying this is the most severe case of EULA violations in CCP's history. So I'm not sure about how that plays out, but that's been reported.
Another one. A good point here from Joral Antonius is he has the opinion that GigX was already on warning for threats. We don't know whether GigX had been warned about threats because we have no idea what his record was, but it's entirely possible that since this is GigX's gimmick, right, and people have known about it for years, it's been published in logs, it's entirely possible that there have been incidents on file where he threatens people and that there's a paper trail. CCP has the logs. They can look at the logs of everything he said on however many things. And, maybe this was not oh my God, he screwed up and it's his first offense. Maybe it's holy crap, dude, we've told you how many times to stop threatening people in real life. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But we also actually, GigX is not alone in that type of behaviour. Do you see that this is possibly CCP, making a move to actually curtail some of these things? Because not so long ago we had Grath, obviously lovely Grath, making threats. Well, not threats, wishing ill harm to people in real life. And yet that was all okay. That was all fine. Do you think that this is maybe just CCP going, yeah, okay, well, we need to draw a line under some of this, so we're going to start doing stuff.
May make a statement. Yeah, I think they made a statement with this. Look, you guys do this too much. This is a severe case, and this is what's going to happen to you if you continue this kind of behavior. I think that's a good point.
I think that a lot of the responsibility for this comes down to, like, it's not the games media's job to be responsible for what happens in Eve, but I think just judging from what happened with my situation from the FanFest Alliance panel and what happened with GigX is in each case, I need to get the facts straight on this. I'm not sure. Did GigX get banned before or after the PC Gamer article came out with the dismemberment headline?
It was before, I believe.
Yeah, before any major articles got hold of it. Yeah, he was
so
really
never
quick.
mind. I take that back then. So that actually is, I think, more evidence that it has nothing to do with the media and is much more that CCP is taking a more proactive tone.
It had to do with, I believe CCP was watching the Twitch, and then they noticed it on the Twitch in the Alliance chat, and then go, oh, it's an in-game thing. Because CCP rarely, very, very, very rarely will ban someone for comments outside a game. If we look at, for a prime example, Lex Arson has said lots of really fucking fucked up things on Twitter. Never been banned. But I think it was the fact that GigX did it in Alliance chat that gave CCP the ability to go, okay, yeah, fuck this.
Well, they probably, since he did an Alliance chat, there's probably a number of people who petitioned it when it took place.
Yeah, what about Paul Stunt, though? Because obviously he said something out of game, and he called a ban for that one, didn't he?
I think that's a reasonable point. The all of the challenges with this involving GigX getting banned is, it's not something that, like, from a Goons forum, like, we didn't plan any of, like, you can look back and say it's predictable and hindsight is 2020, but I didn't expect GigX to get banned and then suddenly everybody's talking about Mitani at FanFest with the wizard hat, right? Like, that's not something that I'm going to be all like, hey guys, let's all talk about this again. This will be fun. So, I think that the point that a lot of people are outraged about, and when they're saying free GigX, my impression is that some of them, like the PLFCs, are mad because they wanted to swoop in and do an op for PL. And so I don't care about their criticism about anything. They wanted to find an excuse to do their thing and whatever. But a lot of people were mad about the stunt banning and they're looking at this, and there is inconsistency and gray areas, right? Like, especially because of the sweep of time. Stunt getting banned because of something that he said on Tweetfleet Slack, which is completely out of game and not in the realm of CCP's client, is very different from someone in the Eve game client making a real-life threat and clearly violating the EULA. So, I think that there would be less outrage and confusion if there had been collectively more consistency with any of this. And that's a fair criticism.
An interesting point too, though, is with the stunt thing, is he did impersonate a CCP employee in that channel. Like, it wasn't just something he said simply. He was impersonating the dev, and that's why Fozzie banned him. Yeah, he was impersonating Fozzie. He said Fozzie said this or something like that as Fozzie, and got some serious trouble with that. So, but yeah. Anyway, moving on. I linked in chat here. I'll link it again one more time. This is a complete collection. Someone on Reddit actually went and collected everything that happened from this, including all the links and everything you can want, more than I can talk about or link here in chat. But I see a good equivalency here, and I want to ask Aerith about this and see what you think. Aerith, have you ever seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War?
Great movie.
Tom Hanks.
Great movie.
Yes.
I think so, a long time ago, so I barely remember it.
So, it's about Afghanistan and the CIA.
Yeah, it's about Afghanistan and like a senator of the United States really pushing hard to, like, bring down the Russians from Afghanistan, using Afghanistan to bring down the Russians. And when you read the PC Gamer article, there's a good thread that got brought up, I believe, Kotaku, where it talks about you reigniting your passion for the CSM because of something like this. It kind of brings me to a thought about Charlie Wilson's War, right? Like, you're bringing down these alliances using the power that you have in the CSM, the power you have with your vast wealth. What do you think of that? Like, the equivalency there?
I don't see it as bringing him down through the power of CSM. It's that you're in a place with another CSM member that allows you the access to that person that you would otherwise not have.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of meta stuff that happens at the CSM.
I also want to say, well done, Boat, for not actually using World War II analogy.
This is Charlie Wilson's War is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. But it just, he does so many things behind closed doors that you normally wouldn't have access to, but because he's a senator, he's able to do it. And that, kind of reminded me of him at the CSM. You have Anominate and Aerith, both the higher up goons, who have complete and utter access to all these other CSM members to then talk behind closed doors. They're at dinner. They can chat about this or that involve in-game stuff.
I think the real powerboat is from us being leadership where we can make the deal.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you being able to say, I have the authority to do this, which is what happened in the movie.
Yeah, like, if we weren't able to kind of make the deal in real time and didn't have that provenance or that cred, then, yeah, like, we wouldn't be effective.
Like, you couldn't see Zenuria making this happen. Like, even if Zenuria broke all this. He doesn't have the power to say, I speak for Mittens and all of Goons, I
don't think he can say that sentence properly.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges that I want people to think about from CCP's perspective, I'm seeing people debating this or that ban in chat, is somebody brought up the point of, well, Gygax is threatening somebody in real life, but, does he actually have the means to carry it out? So whatever, should they take that seriously? But, keep in mind, guys, CCP is a business, right? It is a for-profit entity. It is a company, and companies, even if it's in Iceland, have liabilities, right? So a lot of these things involving EULAs and a lot of the policies that they enforce, like, sure, this person who is part of your product or service is making threats that they can't actually carry out. But from a liability perspective and just from a game reputation perspective, sometimes, you just have to make sure that that stuff isn't allowed. Another example is the Erotica 1 bonus room. Like, right. Erotica 1, like, this is a scenario, and like, I had to shoot a couple of people in Goonswarm for being toxic and breaking rules separately. One was being toxic, one was breaking rules. And it was a scenario where you could find excuses for the behavior. You could do this, you could do that, you could do the other thing. And sometimes when people cross a line, you realize that the rules have to change. Of all people, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but what happened at the Alliance panel in 2012, Alliance panels before that have always been very raucous, and we've all said lots of regrettable, dumb things. But I think that the incident of the wizard hat, my behavior crossed a line to the point that people realized that, now it's time for us to actually change the rules of this, right? Sure, you could say slippery slope, natural progression of it, but, it, I think, showed, like with the Erotica 1 bonus room, that, actually things have changed. The internet has changed. The culture of the internet is changing, where things that we used to say in 2006 aren't okay anymore. And we have to ban things like the bonus room, right?
Yeah,
it's different over time.
The bonus room thing was interesting, too, with the ban. It's like CCP would allow things like, we did the, Scam Court. And that was okay because it didn't require anyone to do anything like crazy. It was just a bit of role-playing. But then when you took that to the bonus room, because a lot of people, when he got banned for the bonus room, were like, well, goons do Space Court. How can they do Space Court if we can't have the bonus room? But it's taking something and pushing it to that next level that eventually gets you fucked, right? You take something just a little too far, and then CCP has to go, yeah, our lawyers are telling us that that's not going to fly anymore. Yep, we don't want to lose our company.
Yeah, the bonus room started out as just a scam, and then they took it to this really creepy emotional abuse level, right, where instead of like, so, you do an Alliance panel presentation and you have somebody sing songs in order to ransom their ship, or somebody, we have that amazing YouTube clip of those like guys talking about Texas law because like they got a ship stolen. Yes. Like 2 hours of like Texas law threatening. And, you can look at that and you can look at it and go, wow, that's kind of funny. But when you get to like the bonus room stuff, then it starts out kind of similar, but it just takes it too far. And at some point you realize that moral qualms do come up. And, it's tough. I mean, technically the bonus room was just a scam on comms, and that's normal. But if you really listen to some of the stuff that the bonus room guys did, you go, ooh, that's sort of a different thing.
We've had that happen in Goons in our recent history where Digi used to have people put cones on their head. And we're like, yeah, no, that's too far.
Yeah, exactly. And we're like, okay, this is...
It eventually gets to a point.
Yeah, exactly. Like the plunger head stuff was a scenario where I looked at that and I was like, okay, this is creepy and it's going too far. Like, we're just not doing this anymore.
Right.
Okay, so kind of get us back a little bit on track, though.
Yep, sorry.
It's not just the Imperium that really are the winners with regard to CO2, is it? Because to quote Arith, is the real gaming media have obviously picked up on the story. Everyone has written about it. And obviously, there is no such thing as bad press. So lots of people are talking about the game. Do you think that this kind of thing happening is actually going to draw more people back into EVE?
That's the hope. And PC Gamer article still is forthcoming, the big one. So yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and there's also a couple of major YouTube groups that do like gaming news that have covered it too. I watched one just earlier, a couple of Scottish guys, and it was fucking hilarious. And they were just throwing out words that you wouldn't expect someone who doesn't play EVE to know, and they were very confused by some of those words, and it was hilarious to listen to.
I'm wondering, by the way, this Ice Scheme guy keeps claiming in chat that he got banned from Goons, but unless you actually say who your character name was in Goonstorm that you allegedly got banned from, we can't investigate it. And then we can find out whether you're full of shit or not.
Okay.
Anyway, I think that this is going to be good for EVE. I want to agree with Boat and Aerith on this one, because one of the overarching arguments, I'm going to bring this back around to Fozzie is there was this idea that EVE is too focused on nullsec, and the devs do too much stuff for nullsec, and if we make nullsec more like a bad alliance tournament, whack-a-mole, Fozzie Intosis-like bullshit, that magically you're going to have small groups blossom. Remember back in the day when we talked about where Fozzie was talking about how small groups were going to blossom up in nullsec once we moved away from Dominion? So what I think this incident reinforces is that the narrative of EVE is driven by events that take place in nullsec warfare, and that the only events that get major media attention that then draw focus and opportunities for new players to get excited about taking part in these grand narratives of empires and betrayals and fantastic things. All of that happens in nullsec, and hopefully the powers that be will realize where the money, excitement, and marketing is coming from, and that is from warfare in Sov nullsec.
Yeah, another thing that's interesting about this is inside the game, there's a lot of winners and losers that came out of this, right? And we're going to talk about some more of this later in the nullsec power. It might be a good time to move that, don't you think? Because there's a lot of winners and losers in this. In this outcome of CO2 collapsing. What do you think? Move on? Yes?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so before we move on, we have some shout-outs. 28 months. Twitch Prime subscriber, Nimblar, thank you, sir. 8915 is a brand new Twitch sub. And then Gus Bus 8664 is a brand new Twitch sub. And Ogami Ito with 18 months resubscribing. Thank you, sir, very much. And we're going to move on to the nullsec power hour, and there's a lot of shit that happened with this. And right away, the first big piece of news to come out of CO2's collapse is their only other ally, which was Triumvirate, also are collapsing in a situation. Not so much Triumvirate themselves, but with CO2 finally dead, they've kind of lost every ally they have except their own coalition. And today, or yesterday, I can't remember which, they announced the disbanding of Vanguard Coalition. For those who don't know, Vanguard Coalition was the coalition that Tri come up with, which was their pets in S-Nova and a bunch of other pets. They allowed them to get like 300-400 man fleets instead of Tri's usual like 150. That has been disbanded. They have announced officially that they will no longer be blue to each other. And Tri is solo.
What's the story with FCON and all this?
Well, see, FCON's DRF now, right? So, remember, FCON, as soon as Tri reset the DRF, FCON went immediately joined the DRF, so that Tri wouldn't shoot him, because if they shot FCON, they would have to shoot DRF, and they didn't think Tri would do that, but Tri did. So now you have FCON kind of like winning here. So you have so CO2 is dead. Tri has disbanded their own coalition, leaves Tri by themselves. Now, where Tri goes from here, who knows? They might go up north and rejoin with NC and work with them again. Who knows? DRF comes out ahead because they're going to gobble up all that space that CO2 lost, all that rental space, and Faith of Ballas is going to be theirs. Test comes out way ahead because they're gobbling up shitloads of corporations. They just got all of these, the space and Impus that'll probably eventually go to Brave. Brave will probably get Impus, which means that they'll now have better space than Phantom Accord does, which is fucking hilarious.
Well, I have to say, I absolutely love the way that you pronounce impasse.
Oh, Impus, whatever. I don't give a fuck. But an interesting play though, and I'm curious what you guys think is Test is doing the CO2's dead. Let's play advocate of the people. I don't know if this is a good move by Test or what, but there's an official statement by Villy basically saying we'll help you get the fuck out to Losec. We'll help you evac. We'll set you blue. We'll get you the hell out of here. What do you guys think of this move by Test?
It's the only move they really have. I mean, what's the other move? Oh, we're going to leave your shit locked in here and be goons little bitches or something? Like, no, they got to do the magnanimous thing. That's so they can pick up members. It's pretty much the only move.
Yeah, I mean, it's either basically the choice with all this is, most of the people who are pointing at CO2 and being angry, and that's definitely us on the Imperium side of the aisle. We blame Gigax for him being a traitor and backstabbing us, and the hardcore of lieutenants who followed him. The reality is that almost a huge percentage of the alliance of CO2 is made up of people who joined after CO2 betrayed the Imperium, and so. I mean, we don't like CO2 in principle, but a lot of those people have nothing to do with us. And the alternative that Test has, or that we have, is, you can try to blacklist them all, and then they stay together with a common cause of getting revenge for the betrayal, and potentially pushing them into the hands of our enemies more. So I think it's a good move by Test. I think it's pretty much their only move.
Test has now exceeded 10,000 members with this move, and their space is going to grow pretty huge. Like, Impasse is very hard to get into. Like, there's no connecting NPC space. You can't sign up from an NPC station to Impasse. You have to do a double jump. So for someone like a PL, it's really hard to fuck with that region if, say, Brave moved in out of Catch. Like, you wouldn't have to deal with any harassment like they do in Catch right now, which would be...
I mean, if Brave gets Impasse at the end of the day, they are probably the single biggest winner of all of this.
Right. And I think that it is pretty well much, when you look at how quickly the SOV for CO2 fell, I know that Brave did a hell of a lot of that work, and obviously, like, Test did well. I mean, literally in 24-hour period, everything in Impasse just collapsed. So personally, rightly or wrongly, I kind of do actually hope that Brave do pick up the space. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, chat's saying that they've decided Legacy Coalition is going to split it 3 ways. It's going to go amongst everyone.
All that matters is who gets the capital in 68, because that person's going to milk all the income from all the other alliances. My guess is it'll stay Test, and they'll just loot them for money.
Right, because you have to go to 6815 to hit all the branches. It's like a little center point.
Yeah, that's the market hub there. So it'd be basically like their version of a 1DQ1.
Yeah, like, this is genius on Test. They'll just exploit them. It's hilarious.
And then I have another link for you coming up here. This is what's currently going on in Syndicate right now. NC Dot has been engaged in a war of aggression against getting their moons back. As we know, moons are going away soon. And every moon that NC takes gets instantly hit and reinforced by a blob of ravens. So, for someone who has never seen this before, this fleet doctrine is hilarious. It's armor-tanked ravens that have the tank of, like, a frigate. But when you have MJDs and you MJD around on the grid, the missiles still hit while you're MJDing. So they're constantly hitting and locking the tower, but anytime a fleet warps near them, they just MJD 200 kilometers away and keep going again. Like, you never get warped in on. And we have seen, I have a link for it here, the one time they did get warped in on, it ended really, really badly. A whole lot of smart bombing max landed right on top of these ravens when they didn't have a bubble up, and they lost 100 because they're paper thin tanked. But it's funny to watch. According to a guy who just told me this now from Initiative, it's the 3rd moon they've reinforced today using this fleet, and they haven't been fucked with yet. So yeah, armor sniper ravens. You think you'd ever hear that word, Mittens, in 2017, the year of our Lord?
No. Things have definitely changed on ironic Raven use.
Yeah, that shit's hilarious. I wish our typhoons were like this. Could you imagine? Like this in Losec would be fucking hilarious.
Well, we don't have typhoons anymore because I threw those
I
things in the dumpster.
Took you long enough. And then other news. Pravi Block found a new way to stop the Astor House creep that they've been dealing with. They suicided a fleet of towers, almost 400 towers, I think, straight into an Astor House as it was defended by Macarials. It just kept throwing towers at it until it finally died. For those that want to see the link to that, that was fucking hilarious. Right here's the link. They just, like, it was Jintan's, I guess, idea, and they just took the cheapest ship that could do the most damage at the most range, that goes really fast, and just started suiciding it. And that shit was fucking hilarious to watch. There's a video out there if you want to find it.
Doesn't that remind you a little bit of when we started doing the Blood Raider Satio thing, where we were using Punishers? So it was literally as cheap as you can, the doctrine, but in sufficient enough numbers where it doesn't actually matter.
Okay, it's been clarified that they lost 930 towers in total. Which probably costs, what, 9 billion ISK? I mean, it's cheap as fuck. But they were able to win the objective, so it's an interesting test. And then, and another bit of news, we were in Mexico when this happened, but Goonswarm has officially passed 30,000 people in our alliance, pushing us even further over the milestone into the largest coalition to ever in gaming history. 30,000, that's just fucking ridiculous. I mean, if you think about it, every character...
Basically what you're saying is that we're fat.
No, I mean, even if like you brought that down to three characters per person, that's still 10,000 people. That's a lot of fucking people.
One of the things that's interesting about the Imperium that a lot of people don't recognize is that there's an assumption that the characters have less humans associated with it, but because our community is sort of ebbs and flows from in and out of Eve, that we keep track of how many people we have by Goonswarm, like Goonfleet.com active firm accounts.
Right.
And it's a lot more than 30,000 people. We actually have more people than we have characters because some people play Eve, some people don't, but they stay active on Jabber and the forums.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones to do with those numbers too is it's not like PL. A lot of people look at like the PL way of doing things, where for every person you have a fax and a super, and when you have a 100-man PL fleet, that could easily be 300 in a few moments because they'll have 100 supers and then 100 fax. That doesn't happen with goons. Like when you see 100 fax machines, that's probably 100 individuals, and then the subcat fleet's 100, 200 individuals, and alts aren't really that big a thing with goons unless you're talking just pure like cap fleet. So that's a vastly different.
Speaking of us being fat, did we talk about how Init, Snuff, and Space Violence made a hit on an NC Nix and lost a few dreads for it? But that was a pretty cool.
No, if you want to talk about that, go ahead.
Jay was bringing it up, and so Snuff has joined the Imperium. That's pretty cool. And the Space Violence and Snuff is helping initiative in Syndicate against NC. And the goal of that campaign is to just make NC bleed as much as possible for whatever they try to do. And I think you're going to see more action there. Also, I think Snuff and Init are trying to teach Baby Goonswarm how to dread and how to drop dreads on things.
I mean, while it was only 95 dreads, it was still pretty lopsided. I mean, they got, I think, 20 facts for 95 dreads, and they got the one super carrier. According to the guys in NC, that guy's super carrier's hardeners wouldn't turn on, and he couldn't broadcast for reps. So every super carrier that they did apparently primary 2 before that, and those lived. They went for that one, and it died. So congrats, because death to all supers.
Mittens, could you stop calling us fat, by the way? We're just big boned.
Hey, look, man, I don't mind being called fat. But another interesting thing, too, from the war down there, we streamed a fight happen recently, is the Raven fleet, is that if NC goes down, and then when they have a big timer, they call everybody. Like, it's still the same as it always is. They call, like, I think they had 450 max versus their 100-man Raven fleet, and they still managed to kill 4 or 5 apostles before they died. I don't know what the fuck NC was thinking. They were doing some dumb things.
It always manages to extract a blood price for anything. they do. And you know, I'm talking to Sister Bliss about this, and one of the points is that, you know, that he's making is it's not so much about, you know, sure, you could just give up on Syndicate and say, okay, like, NC has deployed their supers, whatever, we're gonna just, like, you know, it's October 24th, the moon patches are changing things, who cares? But you know, they're bleeding them for every step of the way, and that's awesome.
And I think Vince Draken in that fight almost lost his personal avatar. He bounced way off. His fax machines were way out of the way, and he had jumped in all his fax prematurely. And they had to bring in their subcaps at 0 on Vince to rep him, to keep him up just enough that he couldn't break. He was down to, I think, 20% armor at one point before the subcap reps hit. Yeah.
You know, in terms of moving goalposts and stuff, I think that we're now in an era where if we lose less than 100 dreadnoughts when we're trying to just throw them at things, like up in Hakonin when we dread bombed on Killabee's little toy, and with this incident with NC, where it's like, oh well, if it's less than 100 dreads, then we're just sort of putting our training wheels on. Yeah, we have lots of dreads, we have lots of ISK. It's good to see our capital FCs getting aggressive. Mistakes are going to be made, and we're going to just continue losing dreads until we win one of these things and figure our shit out.
Yeah, I think that's happening with a lot of people too. Like PL and NC are realizing, oh, we can drop 100 dreads, and if 50 get out, congrats, we did better than we thought we would. Like, people are just throwing dreads around like candy. There's so many you can get right now. It's ridiculous how many
there were some very cheap ones for sale over in 68 FT recently.
Yeah, I did see that. I didn't get to buy any because I was asleep, but we did get an Aeon though. We apparently Thomas Lear crowdfunded an Aeon, to which we blew up with the Keepstar.
That's awesome. That's definitely a comment on us having more money than sense. But yeah, you know, the thing about, like, let me just hit this thing. The thing about all of this, like, you know, the Imperium throwing dreads around is that, you know, you can only win or lose in a situation with dreads. Like, you can't really extract them because siege. I mean, you can try to get lucky and extract a couple, but, you know, when you commit, one of the reasons why capital battles involving dreads are so awesome, which is why we're happy that CCP a while back changed the siege timer to be 5 instead of 10 minutes, making it more useful, is, you know, those battles, you get in, you hit that siege button, and something's going down. Like, shit is going to die. At the very least, fax machines on the other side are going to die, but you're going down in flames, probably, if you don't win the fight. So it's always a very extreme thing. You drop dreads, and either you massacre the other side and it's high fives all around, or you lose everything you put on the table. So it's just a really, I think, a vibrant and awesome game of high-stakes poker.
I'm interested to see. We only got a few minutes left, and I'll leave this question with Mittens before we call it a day here. Okay, what's next? Okay, CO2 has just fallen, so that war is pretty much over. You have Tri doing a little bit of here and there, but, I mean, Tri's not going to hold much longer on their own. What's next down there? Like, is they just clean up, and then what's the next war? I mean, does CVA finally die?
Well, I think this is something that Aerith might be able to comment on more, but, you know, as we get closer to October 24th, you're going to see a lot of alliances trying to take stock of how they're going to make money, trying to adjust their tax system. So much of nullsec has been fueled by either casinos, which are banned now, or passive income from moons that funds the ship replacement programs of most major entities. And now with the shift to refining arrays, where people actually have to mine moon goo, and every moon getting scrambled in EVE, I think that the next phase of EVE is going to be people trying to prepare for the big shakeup. And keep in mind, guys, like, none of us have any idea. The true sec of various regions are going to stay the same, but the moon value of regions are going to be completely different. So right now, like, Delve is an awesome region, but at the end of the moon rebalance, for all we know, Delve might just be atmospheric gases equivalent. So the entire chessboard is getting its colors and configuration changed. And I think there's going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of caution, actually, going into that.
So, Aerith, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this earlier. Everyone's going to retreat to their corners. There's too little time now to do anything major before the patch. No one's going to want to get into a massive attrition campaign. So maybe probably happens. That would be interesting to see if everyone gangbangs them and takes away their stations when that is due to come in. But until that can happen, until we can go and take them, no one's going to hit them. So it's just going to be hunker down and Jew it up, I guess.
All right. Well, thanks, Movement, Aerith, and, of course, Mittens coming in from your
except for us,
party.
we're probably gonna do a little something.
Yeah, Goonswarm, we have plans, but people.
Oh, I have plans. I just don't know if they are real. So yeah, that's it for the day. We're out of time. So I'll see you guys next week. And thanks. For
thanks, Boat, for preparing
no
the document. I don't think Boat gets enough shout outs here. As you guys can see from the earlier part of the show, I'm pretty much completely dependent upon the work Boat puts into getting our agenda and crafting things for the meta show. And at first, when I didn't have it, I'm like, my God, what do I say? So thank you, Boat, for, as usual, making all this happen. And thanks, guys, for joining and watching us and supporting us.
Yep, up next is Gamal, and real quick, we have 2 shout-outs. Bethail subscribed for 28 months. Thank you, sir. 28 months is a long fucking time. Then XRTDS1 with the brand new Twitch Prime subscribe. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good day.
The Outcast in chat.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching the Meta Show.